unfold.
Welcome back to The Deep Dive. We are in the business of intellectual triage, taking the world's most overwhelming sources and finding the clearest, most important nuggets of knowledge you need to be truly well-informed.
And today we are tackling, well, what might be the ultimate intellectual puzzle.
It really is. We're looking at an object resting quietly under climate control in Yale's Beinecke Library, cataloged simply as MS-408.
It's a 600-year-old book that has basically resisted every single form of interrogation we've thrown at it.
Everything, from the greatest human code breakers of the 20th century to now the most advanced AI models of the 21st.
We are talking, of course, about the Voynich manuscript.
That's right. And our sources for this deep dive, they paint this incredible picture of a collision, a real struggle between two ways of knowing.
It's a clash of eras, really. You have the fragile, tactile reality of the 15th century. You know, the vellum, the iron Gall ink, the mineral pigments, the physical past.
And that's crashing head-on into the cold, abstract, silicon-driven logic of right now. It's vellum versus silicon.
And this is so much more than just, a dusty old book. It's become a proving ground. For centuries, trying to read the Voynich was for medievalists, for historians, cryptographers with, pencil and paper.
Right, and intuition.
And now it's just a computational brute force problem. We're throwing natural language processing at it, deep learning, generative AI, the whole kitchen sink.
Okay, so let's define our mission here for you, the listener. We're going to walk through this entire history, from the moment the calfskin was prepared in the early 1400s.
Through the occult courts of Prague, all the way to these, 2025 claims of AI translations that just turn out to be, elegant fiction.
We need to understand why this manuscript has truly earned the title of human history's hardest code.
And it all hangs on this one agonizingly simple question that's haunted everyone for centuries.
Is it a genuine piece of lost communication? A sophisticated cipher, a shorthand, a whole constructed language designed to be read.
Or is it just the world's most elaborate, most expensive, and frankly most successful hoax?
Let's find out what the evidence really tells us. So we have to start with the object itself. Our sources are really clear on this. Before we get into the language, into the code breaking, we have to ground this whole thing in the physical artifact.
That's the first mistake so many modern attempts make. They just treat it like a text file, a string of characters.
What's a book? A tangible thing.
Exactly. And the material foundation is everything. The very first piece of definitive modern forensic science basically it dismantled a century of romantic theories.
And that science is the famous C14 dating breakthrough. But before that, for centuries, the main theory was the Roger-Bacon hypothesis. Can you just set the scene for that one?
Oh, the Bacon hypothesis was incredibly seductive. I mean, it's a great story.
It is.
The idea was that the 13th century English friar, Roger Bacon, they called him the Doctor Mirabilis, the wonderful doctor, wrote the manuscript.
He was this legendary figure, rumored to have all the secret scientific and alchemical knowledge that the church suppressed.
Exactly. So if the Voynich was his work, it could contain these explosive, lost secrets from the high medieval era. But for that to be true, the book would have to date from the late 1200s.
And then science finally had its say in 2009.
And it put that beautiful theory to rest. Absolutely and definitively. A team at the University of Arizona, they performed meticulous radiocarbon dating.
On the vellum itself.
On 4 tiny slivers of the vellum, the calfskin. And because vellum is organic, it's an animal hide, the C14 results were incredibly consistent.
And what did they find?
They placed the date of the calf's slaughter, the moment the material was created, firmly between 1404 and 1438, with a 95% probability.
Wow, that is a huge jump forward in time, almost 200 years.
It changes everything. It puts the manuscript squarely in the early 15th century, a time before the printing press, before most major cryptographic treatises in Europe.
So a completely different intellectual context.
Completely different. We're now looking at something probably made in, say, Hussite Bohemia or northern Italy. And that vellum, it tells us something else too, something about the economics of its production.
Right, because making a book like this wasn't cheap.
Not at all. Based on the size and the number of pages, the manuscript required the hides of at least 14 or 15 entire calves.
So this was a significantly expensive project. It took real capital, real resources. It's not something a lone scholar just whips up in their spare time.
Right. But, and this is a really important caveat our sources point out, the vellum quality itself was just average.
Okay, that's strange. If they're spending a fortune on the raw materials, why isn't it more, luxurious?
And that's the key. It was expensive, but it was utilitarian. It wasn't a luxury item. The scribes actually had to work around natural defects in the pages.
Defects? Like what?
Visible holes, they're called lacunae, and tears in the skin. Sometimes it'd be sewn up, and the scribes would just write right up to the edge of the hole or pause the text and continue on the other side.
So they were being resourceful.
Very. It suggests a workshop context. They used what they had. They didn't waste anything. They weren't sourcing, perfect vellum for some bespoke royal commission.
Okay, so the skin is the foundation. Then we have the chemistry of what's on it, the ink and the paint. And this is where the physical reality really starts to feed into that language versus hoax debate.
It does, because the ink tells us about the workflow. The text itself is written in standard iron gall ink.
Which was the default for, 1,000 years in Europe?
Pretty much. It's a mix of tannins from crushed oak galls and iron sulfate. And researchers use this technique, energy dispersive X-ray spectroscopy.
EDS. What is that doing for the listener?
It's basically bombarding a tiny spot of ink with an electron beam and then measuring the X-rays that bounce back. Each element gives off a unique signature.
And it confirmed the standard recipe.
Yep. Carbon, iron, sulfur, potassium, calcium, the usual suspects for iron gall. But here is the critical finding, the real smoking gun from that analysis.
Go.
It refutes a major theory, that the book was an old blank notebook that someone filled in with gibberish centuries later.
How?
The EDS analysis proved that the ink used for the script, the Voynich's text, and the ink used for the outlines of the illustrations, they show the exact same microscopic and chemical characteristics.
They're chemically identical.
They're twins. And the implication is just irrefutable. The words and the images were born together. They are contemporaneous.
So this whole thing was a single conceived project from the start.
Yeah.
The weird plants and the weird writing were designed to go together.
Right from the moment of creation in the 15th century. It was a planned object.
What about the colors, though? The sources say the pigments were applied pretty crudely. Does that suggest something different?
It might. The paints are standard for the time malachite for greens, azurite for blues.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're often applied sloppily, straying outside the lines.
So a different person coloring it in.
That's a strong possibility. It could suggest a division of labor.
Yeah.
You have a highly skilled scribe or draftsman who does the ink outlines in the text, and then maybe a less skilled apprentice or a colorist comes in after to apply the paint, maybe in a hurry.
And beyond the materials, the book itself, its structure, shows this incredible level of planning.
Oh, absolutely. It's a big book. It has about 102 folios now, so around 240 pages. But the original page numbering shows that at least 14 bifolios.
Which is 28 pages.
28 pages are missing, just cut out by someone at some point in its history. So whatever story it tells, it's physically incomplete.
And then there are those incredible, elaborate fold-outs.
Yeah, those are maybe the most amazing structural feature. Some pages unfold to be 3, 4, even 6 times the size of a normal page. The famous Rosette's folio is just a masterpiece of planning.
Which tells you this was a designed object. You can't just improvise that. You have to plan where the text and images will go across these huge multi-page spreads before you even bind the book.
Precisely. And that meticulous planning brings us to what might be the most powerful modern discovery about its creation.
The fact that it wasn't written by one person.
It was written by 5. This finding is just devastating to the whole single mad genius theory.
This is the work of medievalist Lisa Fagin Davis.
Yes. For a long time, scholars noticed 2 different statistical dialects in the text, which they called language A and language B. But the handwriting itself looked pretty uniform.
So Davis looked closer not just at the words, but at the physical act of writing.
Exactly. The ductus, the way the scribe forms the letters. And she identified 5 distinct scribes with different hands. Scribe 1, for example, wrote most of the herbal section with a very open, rounded script.
And Scribe 2.
Scribe 2 did the astronomical sections, and his hand is much more cramped. He squishes his letters together. Then you have scribes 3, 4, and 5 who did smaller sections.
So why is finding 5 different writers such a critical piece of evidence? What does it rule out?
Well, think about it. If one person invents a secret language for themselves, their handwriting, their physical rhythm, is going to be consistent. It's their own personal style.
But 5 people...
5 people all trained to write the same, unique, otherwise unknown script. That strongly suggests a scriptorium, a workshop.
So the script itself was a standardized system. It was taught. It was learned by multiple people.
Yes. It turns the Voynich from a personal obsession into an industrial product of the 15th century book trade. And that's a profound conclusion, whether the script means something or not.
Okay, so we have this expensive, carefully designed object made by a team of 5 people around, say, 1420. But who paid for it, and why did they think it was worth a fortune?
This is where we get into the manuscript's known history, its provenance, and it's really a genealogy of obsession.
Where does it first show up on the historical radar?
It first appears at the end of the 16th century in the court of the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II in Prague.
And Rudolf's court was, well, it was a wild place. It was this melting pot of alchemy, astrology, and real science.
He was the patron of the great astronomer Tycho Brahe, but he also entertained all sorts of occult figures. It was the absolute perfect environment for a book that promised secret knowledge.
And according to the historical record, Rudolf paid an almost unbelievable price for it.
600 gold ducats.
600 ducats. Let's put that in perspective for you. What could you buy with that?
That was a fortune. The equivalent of buying a small, fully staffed castle or, funding a medium-sized military campaign for a month. It implies this desperate, incredible level of perceived value.
And that value is based on a specific but wrong belief about who wrote it.
Right. He wasn't buying a 15th century manuscript. He thought he was buying a 13th century manuscript by Roger Bacon. Yeah. He was buying access to the legendary suppressed secrets of the Dr. Mirabilis.
Okay, but when you hear that price tag, doesn't that immediately make the 𝐏𝐂𝐃𝐂𝐂𝐓 hypothesis, the idea that it's a fraud, seem a lot more plausible?
Oh, it absolutely pours gasoline on the hoax fire.
Because who would risk that kind of money unless they were promised, magic?
Precisely. The 𝐏𝐿𝐃 hypothesis links the book directly to the English occultists who were in Prague at the time, specifically Edward Kelly and his associate, John Dee.
And Kelly was Dee's medium who claimed to speak with angels in a language called Enochian.
Right. But he was also a known criminal, a notorious forger. He'd had his ears cropped as a punishment for counterfeiting before he even came to Prague.
So the theory is that Kelly, this known con man, created this gibberish manuscript specifically to swindle the incredibly gullible, occult-obsessed Emperor Rudolf.
And the fact that the text is unreadable becomes a feature, not a bug. It's so secret, so profound, that a mere mortal like you can't be expected to understand it. Pay me.
But we know the book was in Rudolph's court, and not because of Kelly's shady history, but because of hard physical evidence on the book itself.
Yes, this is material science saving the day again. On the very first page, folio F1R, there was this faded, almost invisible signature.
And under UV light.
Under modern ultraviolet light, you can clearly read the name, Jacobi de Tepenetz.
And we know who that is, a real historical person.
We do. Jacobus Horsaki de Tekenek. He was Rudolf II's personal physician, and this is the key part, the head of his botanical gardens.
So the story rates itself. Rudolf gets the book, thinks it has the secrets of nature, can't read it, so he gives it to his top botanist.
Here, figure out what these impossible plants are.
Yeah.
And of course, Tepenek failed, but his signature is this undeniable timestamp. It anchors the book in Prague, right around the year 1600.
Okay, so after Tepenek, the book moves on. It ends up with a Prague alchemist named Georg Beresch.
And Beresch is the one who really starts the intellectual struggle. He's completely baffled by it, and he decides to reach out to the biggest intellectual superstar of the day.
Athanasius Kircher, a Jesuit polymath in Rome.
Kircher was famous, or maybe infamous, for claiming he could read Egyptian hieroglyphs. This was a huge deal in the 17th century. So Beresch sends him copies of the script, hoping the great Kircher can solve what he called the silent Sphinx.
But Beresch dies before he can send the actual book.
He does. And the book passes to his friend, Johannes Marcus Marci, a doctor at Charles University. And this brings us to the most famous piece of paper associated with the manuscript.
And the Marci letter.
Marci finally sends the physical book to Kircher in 1665, and he includes this cover letter. It's historical gold. He calls the manuscript a Sphinx that only Kircher can solve. He repeats the Roger Bacon story.
Which helps cement its legendary status for centuries to come.
Absolutely. So the world's greatest secret book is delivered to the world's greatest self-proclaimed genius code breaker.
And Kircher completely fails.
Totally. He couldn't make heads or tails of it, so he just stored it. And that's where the Voynich begins, its long sleep. For 250 years, it's just sitting in the library of the Collegio Romano in Rome.
It survived the suppression of the Jesuits' wars, just sitting there, its secret intact.
Until 1912, the modern rediscovery.
This is where Wilfred Voynich, the Polish-American book dealer, comes in.
Right. The Collegio Romano needed money, and they sold a collection of manuscripts from the Villa Mondragone, And the Voynich was among them. He bought it, instantly recognized its potential value, and named it after himself.
He spent the rest of his life trying to get it deciphered, mostly to prove the Bacon theory he believed in so strongly.
And after his death, it passed through a few more hands until it was finally donated to Yale in 1969, where it sits today as MS-408.
It's an incredible story. This book has been a magnet for obsession, for money, for genius.
And it has repaid every single one of them with absolute total frustration, which just fuels that suspicion, doesn't it? That maybe the frustration is the point.
All right, let's pivot from the physical object to the linguistic riddle inside it. This text, Voyniches, we're talking about 35,000 words made from an alphabet of maybe 20 to 25 unique characters.
But the real puzzle isn't just that the alphabet is unknown, it's the way the script behaves. It's almost mechanical.
Okay, what's the first thing that strikes a cryptographer as odd?
The physical flow, the ductus. It's written left to right, like normal European prose.
Yeah.
It has a ragged right margin. It looks, for all the world, like someone just writing a normal text.
But there's a detail that drives code breakers absolutely crazy.
Fluency without error.
Meaning?
Our sources hammer this point home. In over 200 pages, there are almost no strike-throughs, no erasures, no corrections.
Which is not normal.
Not if you're encrypting something. Think about it. If you're painstakingly encoding a Latin text into a complex cipher, you are going to make mistakes. You're going to pause, check your key. The Voynich scribes just wrote fluently, consistently, no corrections.
So what does that fluency tell us? What does it force us to conclude?
It pretty much rules out the idea that this is a complex, difficult cipher being applied in real time. The ease of production suggests one of two things.
Okay.
Either the scribe is just copying from a source that was already written in Voynich, or they were writing in a language or a system that they knew intimately, that they had practiced. It suggests ease, not struggle, which is the opposite of difficult encryption.
And that fluency just sets the stage for the big computational problem, the entropy paradox.
Right, and entropy for you at home is just a measure of unpredictability or randomness.
So does Voyniches look random like a real language, or is it too structured?
Well, at first glance, it passes the test. On what we call first-order entropy, which just measures how often individual characters appear, it looks fine. Some letters are common, some are rare, just like E and Z in English.
Okay, so far so good. It looks like it could be a language.
But then you dial up the scrutiny to second-order entropy, and this is where the anomaly appears. This is where it just looks weird.
And second order is what? The likelihood of letters appearing next to each other.
Exactly. It measures conditional entropy. What's the chance of letter B following letter A? In English, Q is almost always followed by U. But Voyniches has this extreme predictability across the entire alphabet.
It's too predictable.
It's way too predictable. Its conditional entropy is incredibly low. It is more repetitive and structurally constrained than any known human language. It looks like language, but it behaves like a machine.
And that mechanical nature, that's reinforced by another feature they found, right? The rigid slot system of how words are built.
Yes, this is a huge clue. And it suggests it's definitely not a language like Latin or German or English.
So how does this slot system work?
It is incredibly rigid. Analysts found that certain characters, or little groups of characters, only ever appear at the beginning of a word. That's the prefix slot.
Okay.
Another set of characters only ever appears in the middle, the root slot. And a third set is reserved strictly for the end, the suffix slot. And they never ever mix. You don't find a prefix character at the end of a word.
It's less like writing a sentence and more like building with Legos, where only certain pieces can connect in certain ways.
That is a perfect analogy. It's purely mechanical assembly. And this combination of low entropy and rigid structure, it just completely defeated the best human minds of the 20th century.
We have to talk about the Friedman failure. William and Elizabeth Friedman, I mean, these are absolute legends.
The people who broke the Japanese pure PL code in World War II arguably shortened the war.
And they spent decades on the Voynich. What was their final devastating conclusion?
They applied every tool in the cryptographic trade for 20 years. And they concluded two things. One, it was absolutely not a simple substitution cipher. You can't just swap one symbol for one letter.
Again, two.
Two, the bizarre structural anomalies meant it just defied any known encryption technique they had. It was something else entirely.
And Elizabeth Friedman, perhaps the greatest female cryptographer in history, she famously said that trying to decode it as a standard cipher was
doomed to utter frustration. That was her final verdict. They ended up leaning heavily toward the idea that it was an a priori artificial language.
a constructed language. made from scratch.
Yes. A philosophical language designed centuries before people like John Wilkins in the Enlightenment were doing it. It implied this massive, incredibly sophisticated intellectual project that history had completely forgotten. But the very fact that the Friedmans, the best in the world, said it was doomed to utter frustration, well, that forces you to confront the other possibility.
That there's just nothing there to read.
Exactly. The hoax hypothesis.
Yeah.
The idea that this is a fraudulent object, a perfect forgery of a secret text designed specifically to fool a guy like Rudolph II out of 600 gold ducats.
And the most powerful, most scientific argument for this hoax theory comes from a British computer scientist, Gordon Rugg.
Yes, his work on the Card and Grill, which he published back in 2004, is a game changer.
Because what Rugg showed was that all that structure we just talked about, it doesn't necessarily equal meaning.
Precisely. He demonstrated that you could generate text with all the same weird statistical properties as Voynich's, the slot system, the repetition, even obeying Zipf's law, using a really simple, low-tech mechanical process, and with zero linguistic intent.
He reverse engineered it.
A beautiful piece of reverse engineering. He saw the mechanical rigidity and thought, can I replicate that mechanically? And the tool he used was the Card and Grill.
Which is usually a tool for encryption, for hiding text.
Right. But Rugg flipped it. Instead of using it to hide meaning, he used it to create pattern. He built a big table of syllables, a column of prefixes, a column of roots, a column of suffixes, all taken from the actual manuscript.
And the grill is basically a stencil, a piece of parchment with holes cut in it.
Exactly. A stencil with 3 holes that you move over the table. The holes line up to select 1 prefix, 1 root, and 1 suffix. You write them down. That's your word. Then you move the grill and do it again.
It's a rapid mechanical process. You don't have to think.
You don't have to think at all. And the text you generate, it is statistically a dead ringer for Voynich's. It has the slot system baked in. It's highly repetitive, giving it that low entropy. And it even follows Zipf's law.
But it is provably 100% meaningless gibberish.
Utterly meaningless. And Rugg's demonstration is just this massive intellectual blow to the it's too complex to be a hoax argument.
Right. It shows that you don't need a secret genius inventing a language. You just need a clever con man with a table and a stencil.
It reduces this 600-year-old mystery from an impenetrable cipher to a very, very clever parlor trick.
But what about the main critique of Rugg's theory? The timeline. The Card and Grill was officially described by Girolamo Cardano in 1550. That's a century after the vellum was made.
That's the big counter-argument, yes. But Rugg has a good response. He argues that the principle using a template to select prearranged text elements is simple. You don't need to read Cardano's book to figure out how to cut holes in a piece of parchment.
So it could have been invented earlier.
Or, and this fits perfectly, if the hoaxer was Edward Kelly in the 1590s, he would have known about the Card and Grill. And he could have easily just bought a 150-year-old blank book to write his gibberish in to make it look authentically ancient.
Ah, so the C14 date of the vellum doesn't actually disprove a later hoax?
Not at all. It just proves the vellum is old, doesn't prove the ink is. Although, we did establish the ink, and outlines were contemporaneous. It's a tangle.
So Rugg's theory remains very strong. What about other, more psychological hoax theories?
There are a few. The idea of glossolalia, which is basically speaking in tongues, but written down.
Yeah.
Or graphomania, just a compulsive urge to write.
And in both those cases, the writer would be producing fluent, error-free text that feels logical to them, but is actually just statistically repetitive nonsense.
Exactly. It would explain the fluency and the strange patterns without needing a complex cipher or a mechanical device. ###tag-D. The AI Assault and the Triumph of Material Science, 2016-2024.
So we've established that the best human minds just couldn't crack this thing. So in the 21st century, the assumption was, well, maybe a computer can. Maybe AI can see patterns we can't.
The torch passed to computational brute force. And the first major attempt was from the University of Alberta, led by Professor Greg Kondrak's team around 2016 to 2018.
And this was a serious academic attempt using natural language processing.
Very serious. They trained their AI on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which had been translated into 380 languages, to give it this huge baseline for what human language looks like statistically.
And after all that training, what did the AI say was the most likely source language for Voynich's?
It came back with Hebrew. It gave it an 80% statistical match, which is very high. It gave the team a lot of confidence to move forward.
So they have a source language. What was their specific theory for how the Hebrew was turned into Voynichese?
They proposed a cipher using alphagrams.
Which is just an anagram, but sorted alphabetically.
Right, so the word cat would be written as act. The idea was that the Voynich script was a cipher for a Hebrew text where the letters inside each word had been scrambled alphabetically.
And then they tried to prove it by using Google Translate.
This is where it all went wrong. They unscrambled the first sentence of the manuscript according to their hypothesis and fed the resulting Hebrew into Google Translate.
And it produced a sentence that sounded plausible. She made recommendations to the priest, man of the house, and me and people.
It sounded, sort of like a real sentence. But the scientific community rejected this almost instantly. There was a fatal flaw in the methodology.
Two fatal flaws, really?
Yes. The first is fundamental. Anagramming destroys information. When you scramble the letters, you obliterate the original syntax, the grammar.
So trying to unscramble it without a key is mathematically impossible.
The number of possible combinations is astronomical. It's computationally impossible. So for the AI to claim it found the answer, it had to be guessing. Or more accurately.
It was hallucinating, which is the second flaw.
Exactly. Google Translate is designed to be helpful. It's programmed to produce coherent, grammatical output, even from garbage input. It took that jumbled string of Hebrew letters and forced it into the most statistically likely English sentence it could create.
It was generating high-quality fiction, not a translation.
It was. And that problem has only gotten worse now, in 2024, 2025, with these incredibly powerful, large language models. We're in a full-blown hallucination epidemic when it comes to the Voynich.
Oh yeah, you see these claims online all the time. AI finally cracks the Voynich manuscript.
All the time. The most recent one claimed an AI had translated into a Germanic epic about a king and warriors and honor.
It sounds like the AI just recognized the user's request, translate ancient mystery book, and generated a generic fantasy story to match.
That is exactly what's happening. Our sources call it digital pareidolia, seeing faces in the clouds. This is the AI seeing the shape of a request and generating a statistically probable fiction that fits what it thinks you want to see.
So while Silicon is failing spectacularly by making up stories, the real breakthroughs have come from going back to the vellum.
The triumph of material science. And this is where Lisa Fagin Davis comes back in.
The contrast is amazing. She just ignores the digital text and focuses on the physical book using a technique called multispectral imaging, or MSI.
MSI is a game changer for historians. It uses different frequencies of light UV infrared to see things the naked eye can't. Different inks from different eras reflect light differently, so you can see things that have been erased or have faded over centuries.
And in 2024, this is how the smoking gun for the manuscript's later history was found.
Yes. On that same first page, F1R, where Tupinek's signature was, Davis's MSI scans revealed a faded inscription in the margin that had been totally invisible.
What did it show?
3 columns of text, 2 columns of Roman letters A, B, C, and so on, and 1 column of corresponding Voynich clefs.
It's a key, an attempted substitution table.
An attempted key, yes. And by analyzing the handwriting of the Roman letters, Davis was able to definitively match it to the known handwriting of Johannes Marcus Marci.
Wow. The guy who sent the book to 𝐏𝐃𝐂𝐃.
The very same. The implications are enormous. It proves that Marci himself was actively trying to decode the book back in the 17th century. And failing.
But it also validates the entire historical record. The Marci letter, the journey to Rome, It's all real.
It's real. A modern forger couldn't have faked an invisible 17th century note that could only be seen with 21st century technology.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful reminder that the answers are so often in the physical thing, not the digital copy.
Okay, so let's synthesize all of this. We're at the end of our deep dive. We have this book from the 1420s, made by a team, bought for a fortune, that resists every attempt to read it. Let's lay out the final conflict table.
The evidence is just so maddeningly balanced, which is why the debate still rages.
Yeah.
Let's start with the column for supports language.
Okay.
First, the text follows Zipf's law, which is a statistical rule that all natural languages obey. That's a big point in its favor.
Then there's the complexity, the 2 different dialects, language A and B.
And the most powerful piece of physical evidence, the 5 scribes, that points to a shared learned writing system, a real system used by a community.
Okay, now the other side, the evidence that supports hoax.
The biggest one is just the total, utter failure of decryption for 600 years.
Yeah.
If it's a code, it's the best one in human history, by far.
Then there's the math, the abnormally low and predictable entropy. It's just too repetitive to be a real spoken language.
And of course, the killer blow from Gordon Rugg's Card and Grill. He proved you can generate a perfect statistical fake with a simple, low-tech device. It removes that it's too complex to be a hoax argument completely.
We also have to talk about the illustrations as evidence for a hoax. They're maybe the most compelling part.
They really are, because so many of the things depicted are just impossible.
The plants in the herbal section, they're chimera plants.
Right. They're drawn with the roots of one known plant, but the leaves and flowers of a totally different one. They don't exist in nature.
And the bathing section, with all those nymphs connected by bizarre, looping plumbing systems.
Impossible plumbing. It defies 15th century engineering. It defies logic. It looks more like a fantasy world or a joke than a serious scientific manual.
Which aligns perfectly with the idea of a beautiful fraud meant to inspire awe and mystery.
The visual logic of deception.
And that C14 dating remains the one truly neutral piece of data.
It just tells you the vellum is from the 15th century. It could have been used by 5 scribes in 1420, or it could have been used by a con man in 1590. It doesn't solve the core riddle.
So the intellectual mystery is really this test case for artificial intelligence.
It is. AI is a pattern matching engine. Its fundamental assumption is that pattern equals meaning. It's built to find significance.
And the Voynich might be the ultimate counterexample, a system of pure, beautiful, complex pattern with absolutely zero meaning, a book of structure that intentionally communicates nothing.
That's the core of it. If it is a hoax, it's a 15th century psychological masterpiece that successfully trapped the AI of 2025.
And if it's a language, it's a tragic testament to a lost form of human communication, a song from a culture we can no longer hear.
And in the end, we come back to what Lisa Fagin Davis says. The answers are in the object. That discovery about Marci reminds us that the physical artifact has a true story. We just don't know what that true story is yet. Hashtag tag outro.
So, the deep dive into the Voynich manuscript is addictive. It's a mystery that doesn't just resist answers. It seems to actively create new, more complex questions every time you think you've found a foothold. If it's a hoax, it is a staggering success. A low-tech fraud that fooled emperors, broke the world's best code breakers, and has now tied the most advanced AI in knots for years. But if it's a language, it's maybe the most resilient proof we have of just how diverse and how profoundly strange human communication can be. And maybe the biggest challenge isn't the next generation of AI. Maybe it's recognizing our own limits. What if the riddle has, in a way, been solved, but we just lack the lost cultural context? Or, maybe more provocatively, what if we lack the humility to accept that incredible complexity and beautiful patterns can exist without some deep hidden intent? What secret are you convinced those illustrations are trying to hide? The impossible plants, the bathing nymphs, the maps of nowhere. The deeper you dive into the Voynich, the more you realize it's less about the text and more about us, the readers. It's a perfect mirror. It just reflects our own desperate desire to find secret knowledge, to find meaning, even in a place where meaning might be the one thing that is profoundly and beautifully absent. Thank you for joining us on this intellectual journey. We'll see you on the next deep dive.